It's TJ Kopcha here, and I'm talking today about prototypes. Um, so I'm going to jump right in. I've got my live video going so that I can come back to this and you can see me every once in a while. But I'm going to jump over to a PowerPoint for a little bit, and then some recent prototyping activity that I've engaged in, just so that I can show you that prototyping takes a number of forms, and there's really no right or wrong way. The main point of prototyping is really to communicate with your client so that you can give them a version of what you think they're saying based on what you can produce. One of the key things that happens with a client is that they have a vision for what they're looking for in a product, but you can't see that vision. It's in their heads. And no matter how well they describe it, when you show them what you think you're hearing, the response can go anywhere from, hey, that's great, to, wow, that's nothing like what I was thinking. And that can be surprising. So the quicker you prototype and the more accurate your prototypes can be, the better those conversations can be with your client. Now, I want to say one thing. The number of times you get to interact with your client really plays an influence on the quality of prototype you want to show them. If you can have repeated exposures to your client and show them over and over again different prototypes, if they're open to that and they have the time for it, I highly recommend that. But you need to consider, if you only get 2 or 3 meetings with this client over the course of the next 3 months, you really want to make sure that what you show them is as high quality as possible. All right. I'm actually going to use a slideshow here by my colleague, Dr. Che, because it's quite good, and I think it does the trick. So yes, prototypes, storyboards, and flowcharts. These are all ways to communicate with your client and make sure that you're hearing and you're able to produce what they're thinking about. So yeah, look at this is a nice piece of textile. And you can see that there's a whole bunch of different textures and colors and things like that. And so I'm just curious, what do you think the point or the benefit of putting something together like this might be? I'll let you think about that for a minute and come back. Well, according to Alessi and Trollope, a prototype is just a shallow rendition of how a program may look and work. It's a mock-up and that sort of thing. And so when you look at something like this, that might be a mock-up of the final design. Or it may be a way to put a number of textures together so that a client can see how those textures work together or maybe don't work together. Maybe there's certain textures that you like the way they work together and other textures that you don't. One of the things that I thought was really important from this PowerPoint was this idea that there are 4 dimensions of a prototype. There's breadth, which, the percentage of the product's actual functionality is represented in that prototype. So you're trying to show this thing in its entirety as close as possible. There's depth. You may not show the whole project. You may just show one piece of the project, but really focus on doing it well because it's such a critical piece. The look, or the look and feel, the style, and then even the interaction, how people interact with that prototype. So I wanted to start with that because these are the choices that you have to make based on your client, your client's needs, the time that you have, your skill set, and that sort of thing. You need to be actively aware when you're working with your client. What do you think is most important in their opinion? You might want to try and show them that first. If there is a critical piece of functionality, you need to get it to them. And you can do it as simply as a paper prototype or a slideshow or even a full working version. And there's considerations as to which one you want to do, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. So what I want to share with you next, here's an example of how you might use paper prototyping. Let me scoot over. Let me see here. As a reminder, if you're in my class, we do have a prototyping workshop, and here you'll find the prototyping handout for this PowerPoint, plus a bunch of templates for storyboarding and that sort of thing. All right, so now over to here, and I wanted here, my drive. Yeah, I'm working on a project right now with forestry services, and we're trying to develop a website for them, and that website is going to take users through the process of developing a science fair question and methodology, and even presentation of the results and discussion of those results. And so those are roughly the 4 web pages that we have. You develop a question, you come up with a plan to test the question, you get the data, and then you analyze and interpret the data. And so you can see here, we just started with doodling, basically. We've got a nice main header, developing a testable question. We know we're going to want some kind of a video over here. We hadn't found the video yet, so we just put a video placeholder. But here you can see we're starting to get down to the design, the look and feel, some of the content that we really think is important, like be creative. We want curiosity. Where are we going to switch over to bulleted points or numbered points? How do we differentiate what you should be doing from content that you need to be reading? And so we've got this little light bulb idea. Hey, look for problems at your home or school, that kind of thing. So you can see here, this is a very rudimentary drawing. There's nothing really outstanding when it comes to the artistry behind this. But it was a really powerful activity because a lot of decisions had to be made, like where do we put things like an activity? Do we embed them in the page? Do we put them as a PDF? What about alignment? Where do we put the main headings? Where do we put smaller headings, subheadings? How do we organize and arrange multiple videos on the same page so that it's not just a big mess? And so then we realized we're going to have 2 sections to our page, and so you can see we're just doodling here. And then we started moving on to the next page, and we started running into problems. So we decided at this point, instead of struggling with the second page, let's continue to focus on the first page and do some work with that in Google Sites. And so here you'll see Natural Enquirer Journal. Here's what it actually became. Main heading. Here's one of those videos that we were talking about. Here's the content. Scroll down. So now we've got a next level of working prototype, but we started with paper first so that we didn't waste our time working with the technology if we were doing it wrong. All right. So I'm going to leave off with paper prototypes and pick back up with some of the other kinds of prototypes in the next section. In the next video.